According to the US Library of Congress, the 1939 musical film The Wizard of Oz is the most viewed film in history and is often seen on critics' lists of the best films of all time. It was a critical success, being nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. It won Best Original Song with the legendary Over the Rainbow. If you somehow haven't seen it, it follows the plot of Dorothy, a Kansas girl who runs away from home to save her dog Toto. She gets knocked unconscious by a tornado and is transported to Munchkin Land in the Land of Oz and tries to make her way back home, meeting the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion along the way. With its whimsical story of friendship, adventure, and the importance of home, its magical soundtrack, and the amazing acting from the late Judy Garland, it's no wonder that the film still endures today as a family favorite. What may be surprising is the dark story of the film's creation. Not only did the film go through 3 writers and 5 directors, a sure sign of a chaotic production, since the film's release, many credible stories have come out detailing the mistreatment of actors on set, various injuries, and dangerous makeup and costumes. Although, no, the urban legend of the Munchkin hanging in a tree is just that, an urban legend. Buddy Ebsen was the original actor cast to play the Tin Man. Not only was his suit metal, leaving him unable to sit down in it and needing to lean against a board for rest, his makeup led to his hospitalization and replacement. After recording all his songs, rehearsing, and beginning filming, he began to experience extreme cramping in his hands, arms, and legs, to the point of screaming from the pain. He also began experiencing breathing difficulties, and his skin turned blue before his wife called an ambulance. He had had a severe reaction to the pure aluminium powder used to paint him silver, and had inhaled it into his lungs. For 2 weeks, Ebsen was kept in an oxygen tent in hospital to let his lungs recover. Ebsen didn't receive any sympathy from MGM, the production company behind Wizard of Oz, and in fact producers on set were furious with him for not being able to return to set soon enough. He claimed in an interview later that MGM didn't even believe he was sick in the first place. They replaced him with Jack Haley, for whom the aluminium powder was swapped for a slightly safer paste which was applied over grease paint, which did cause an eye infection, though this was quickly treated. Haley also wasn't informed of the reason he was replacing Ebsen until much later, and MGM didn't publicize the reason either. It wasn't just aluminium powder that was a dangerous substance used on set. The snow Dorothy lays on and is snowed on by in the famous Poppy scene was made from white asbestos fibers. At this period in time, asbestos was used for many things, mainly in construction, and it was sold in the holiday season as fake snow for domestic use. However, the lethal dangers of asbestos were known at the time and had been documented as far back as 1897, 40 years prior to the film's release. Thankfully, it appears that no one involved in the production of the film did suffer any asbestos-related health problems, although it is debated whether Jack Haley's son's death was linked to Haley bringing home asbestos-contaminated clothing, as he died from respiratory problems in 2001. Buddy Ebsen wasn't the only one who was sent to hospital for several weeks as a result of filming. Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch of the West, suffered 2nd and 3rd degree burns on her face and hands after a fire was started by the effects crew before she'd had time to exit. Her broom and hat caught alight, burning her chin, nose, cheek, forehead, and hand. She was picked up by a friend to receive treatment, and only a day after the incident, MGM called her to find out when she would return to set. It would be 6 weeks before she was able to return, and she refused to do any more stunts involving fire. Betty Danko, the stunt double and stand-in for Hamilton as the witch, suffered 2 injuries while performing stunts for the film. The first was a shoulder injury after the choreographer fell onto her shoulders through an opening in the stage, ironically while showing the Munchkin actors how to avoid doing just that. She later sustained a more serious injury, doing a scene involving smoke effects that Hamilton refused to do after her burn incident. A pipe hidden under Danko's body used to create smoke from the broomstick the witch was riding, exploded on the third take. Danko was thrown off the broomstick, and she suffered a deep gash around her leg, which required 11 days of hospital treatment. It's also reported that she required a hysterectomy after the incident caused damage to her internal organs. In contrast to the bright, colourful land that Judy Garland danced and sang around as Dorothy, her time playing the role had a devastating impact on her life. Even before she put on the ruby red slippers, Garland had endured years of abuse and exploitation at the hands of her mother and the industry. From the age of just 2.5, Garland's mother forced her and her sister into the spotlight, and before she had even turned 10, Garland was being fed stimulants and sleeping pills to keep her energy levels up and control her sleep schedule. Under the control of her mother and MGM, Garland was made to follow a strict diet to keep her weight low. An MGM executive once called her a fat little pig with pigtails, as she went through the normal body changes any teenager goes through. Louis B. Meyer, the studio head for MGM, insisted her diet only consist of chicken soup, black coffee, and cigarettes, alongside diet pills and amphetamines. Her schedule was intense, being cast in multiple movies at once and forced to do several hours of school, singing practice, then a day of shooting, sometimes staying up until the early hours of the morning to fit it all in. Speaking about her experiences later in life, Garland said, quote, "They had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted. They'd take us to the studio hospital and knock us out with sleeping pills. Then after 4 hours, they'd wake us up and give us the pet pills again so we could work 72 hours in a row." When it was time for filming to begin on The Wizard of Oz, 16-year-old Garland had already endured years of cycling different drugs and constant dieting. Originally, Shirley Temple had been cast for the role, another victim of Hollywood abuse and exploitation, and this put pressure on Garland to stay small and look as young as possible. Alongside the restricted food intake, she had to wear corsets and have her chest strapped down. On top of the drug-fueled control her mother and studio management inflicted upon her, Garland was allegedly assaulted on set by studio executives and, according to her husband Sid Luft's memoir, by some of the Munchkin actors. Spies were also sent to her home to ensure she was following her diet, and contact with people of her age was strictly limited. Louis B. Meyer insulted her looks, calling her "my little hunchback." And in return for the grueling conditions she worked through, Garland was paid $500 a week, in comparison to the $3,000 a week her castmates were paid. In total, she earned $9,649 from the film. Garland ended her time filming The Wizard of Oz addicted to amphetamines and barbiturates, traumatized, and started down a tragic path spanning decades that would lead to her early death at only 47 years old, after accidentally overdosing on barbiturates. As for the previously mentioned urban legend about a Munchkin actor hanging from a tree that has spread across the internet for years, all evidence suggests this rumor was false. MGM's official statement on it was that it was the shadow of a crane bird used along with other animals to make the forest in the scene feel alive. Additionally, the Munchkin actors weren't due on set until after this scene was filmed. The Munchkin actors were subject to many rumors over the years following the film's release related to their behavior on set. There were stories of orgies, needing to call the police every night, and heavy drinking. In reality, there isn't much evidence that this is the case, and one of the actors said years later that the bad behavior had been massively overstated. Filming of The Wizard of Oz came at a time where people with dwarfism were highly discriminated against and used for entertainment in circuses and freak shows. Many of the actors hadn't seen so many other people like them before, and there was excitement over being able to mingle over shared experiences. The Munchkin actors were only paid $50 a week. For contrast, Toto, or Toto's owner, was paid $125 per week. While certainly, as with any demographic, there would be some bad eggs among the over 120 actors, especially with the details of Garland's treatment on set, it's important to remember that the people playing the Munchkins were an exploited minority, and rumours about them should be carefully examined before they are assumed to be true. The Wizard of Oz is still an amazing film, deserving its place among the top films of all time, but the journey to its creation certainly shines a light on the way Hollywood did, and still to some degree does, exploit people in the name of movie making. While safety on sets is much more rigidly followed, child stars like Garland continue to be created to this day, sometimes leading to challenging lives as they grow up in the limelight.